learns the truth about her illness, makes a life-changing decision. General Hospital spoilers. The rain poured heavily over Port Charles as Dr. Britt Westbourne sat alone in her office at General Hospital. The storm outside mirrored the one raging inside her. For months, Britt had been living under the crushing weight of what she believed was her destiny. Ever since learning she carried the gene associated with Huntington's disease, she had accepted that her future would eventually be stolen from her. Every decision she made, every relationship she avoided, every dream she abandoned, all of it stemmed from one terrifying belief: she was running out of time. The diagnosis had haunted her every waking moment. She kept people at a distance. She convinced herself she didn't deserve happiness. She even prepared for a future where she would slowly lose herself. But everything was about to change, and the truth would alter the course of her life forever. Earlier that day, Britt had received an unexpected phone call from a prestigious neurological research center in Switzerland. At first, she almost ignored it. She assumed it was another request for medical records, another specialist wanting to review her case, another reminder of the future she feared. Instead, the call would become the most important conversation of her life. The lead researcher explained that a review of historical genetic testing procedures had uncovered significant irregularities involving several laboratories, including one that had processed Britt's original test years ago. The researcher requested that Britt undergo a comprehensive reevaluation. Though skeptical, Britt agreed. 3 weeks later, the results arrived, and now they sat unopened on her desk. She stared at the envelope. Her hands trembled. Part of her wanted answers. Another part was terrified. What if the disease progression was worse than expected? What if she had even less time than she thought? A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." The door opened. It was Brad Cooper. For a moment neither spoke. Their complicated friendship had survived countless betrayals, secrets, and heartbreak. Brad noticed the envelope immediately. "Those are the new test results?" Britt nodded. "I can't open them." Brad looked surprised. "You? The woman who once performed emergency surgery after being held hostage can't open an envelope?" A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. "This is different." Brad softened. "What are you afraid of?" Britt looked away. "The truth." Brad walked closer. "What if the truth isn't what you think?" Britt laughed bitterly. "When has life ever worked out that way?" Brad didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the envelope and handed it to her. "No matter what's inside, you're not alone." For several seconds, Britt simply stared. Then she opened it. The room became silent. Her eyes moved across the page, once, twice, 3 times. Brad waited, confused, concerned. Then he noticed something strange. Tears appeared in Britt's eyes. But they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of disbelief. "Britt?" She couldn't speak. "Britt, what does it say?" Finally, she looked up. Her voice barely emerged as a whisper. "It says the original diagnosis was wrong." Brad froze. "What?" "The test was wrong." She looked down again. "The mutation isn't there." Brad's jaw dropped. "What do you mean it isn't there?" Britt laughed through tears. "It means I don't have Huntington's." The words echoed through the office. For a moment, neither could fully process them. Years of fear, years of grief, years of preparing for a devastating future. Gone, just gone. Brad suddenly hugged her, and for once, Britt didn't pull away. She broke down completely. Years of emotional pain flooded out all at once. The wall she had built around herself finally collapsed. She cried for the future she thought she'd lost, and for the future she suddenly had back. News spread quickly among those closest to Britt. By evening, several familiar faces gathered at Charlie's pub. The atmosphere felt almost unreal. Everyone was celebrating, everyone except Britt. Not because she wasn't happy, but because she was overwhelmed. She had spent years believing her life was ending. Now she had to figure out how to start living again. As she sat quietly with a drink in hand, someone approached. Jason Morgan. He slid into the seat across from her. "You look like someone just turned your world upside down." Britt smiled. That's exactly what happened. Jason nodded. I heard. Neither spoke for a moment. Their history remained complicated, their connection undeniable. Finally, Jason asked the question no one else had. What are you going to do now? Britt stared into her glass. I don't know. Sure you do. She looked up. Jason continued. You spent years preparing to die. He leaned forward. Maybe it's time to figure out how to live. The words struck her deeply, because he was right. For years, every decision had been shaped by fear. Fear of illness, fear of loss, fear of becoming a burden. Now that fear no longer controlled her, the possibilities were endless and terrifying. That night, Britt couldn't sleep. She walked along the docks where so many pivotal moments in her life had unfolded. The water reflected the moonlight. The city lights shimmered in the distance. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future, a real future, one not defined by disease, one not limited by a ticking clock. Questions flooded her mind. Should she stay in Port Charles? Should she return to international medicine? Should she pursue groundbreaking neurological research? Should she finally allow herself to love someone? The possibilities felt overwhelming. Then her phone rang. The caller ID surprised her. It was her mother, Dr. Liesel Obrecht. Britt answered. Mutter. I heard the news. Britt smiled. Of course you did. Port Charles has a larger gossip network than most intelligence agencies. Britt laughed. The sound felt unfamiliar. Free. Liesel's voice softened. You deserve this miracle. For a moment, Britt became emotional again. I wasted so much time. No? What? You survived. The statement caught Britt off guard. Liesel continued. You made the best choices you could with the information you had. I pushed people away. You protected yourself. I stopped dreaming. You adapted. Britt remained silent. Then Liesel said something Britt would never forget. Do not mourn the years behind you. She paused. Celebrate the years ahead. The words settled deep within Britt's heart. Over the following weeks, Britt underwent a profound transformation. Friends noticed immediately. She smiled more, laughed more, engaged more. The constant sadness that had lingered behind her eyes slowly faded. But the biggest change came when she received another offer. The Swiss Research Center contacted her again. This time they weren't calling about test results. They wanted her to lead an ambitious international project focused on neurological disorders. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The position would place her at the forefront of revolutionary medical research. The salary was extraordinary, the resources unmatched. The chance to help thousands of patients was enormous. Yet accepting the position would require leaving Port Charles, perhaps permanently. The decision tore her apart. Port Charles had brought her pain, but it had also brought her family, her friends, her memories, and the people she loved. Days passed as she wrestled with the choice. Eventually, she sought advice from the one person who understood reinvention better than anyone, Anna Devane. The two women met at the Metro Court. After listening carefully, Anna asked a simple question. What scares you more? Britt frowned. What do you mean? Anna smiled. Leaving? She paused. Or staying because you're afraid to leave? The question hit like lightning, because Britt knew the answer immediately. She wasn't afraid of the opportunity. She was afraid of change, again, and that realization changed everything. A week later, General Hospital's boardroom filled with staff members expecting an ordinary administrative meeting. Instead, Britt stood before them with tears in her eyes. The room quieted instantly. She took a deep breath. I have an announcement. Everyone listened. Several months ago, I believed my future had been decided. She paused. But life surprised me. Many smiled knowingly. Britt continued. I recently received an opportunity that I cannot ignore. A collective realization swept through the room. She smiled sadly. I've accepted a position in Switzerland. Gasps filled the room. Several staff members looked shocked, others emotional. Britt continued speaking. This hospital changed my life. Her voice cracked. So did all of you. Tears appeared throughout the room. But sometimes life gives us a second chance. She smiled, and I've decided to take mine. Applause erupted. Some people cried openly, others stood. Soon the entire room was on its feet, honoring a woman who had fought through unimaginable darkness and emerged stronger. Later that evening, Britt visited the docks one final time before her departure, the same place where she had once mourned the future she thought she'd lose. Now she stood there preparing for a future she never expected to have. Jason appeared quietly behind her, almost as if fate had arranged it. She smiled without turning around. I wondered if you'd show up. Jason stood beside her. You leaving tomorrow? She nodded. Big adventure. Yeah. They stared out at the water. Finally, Jason spoke. You deserve this. Britt looked at him. For a moment, neither said anything. The connection remained, unspoken, powerful, real, but different now. Because neither needed saving, neither needed rescuing. This moment wasn't about tragedy, it was about hope. Jason smiled. You know something? What? You look happy. Britt felt tears fill her eyes, not from sadness, not from fear, but from gratitude, because for the first time in years, she truly was. I am. The words felt liberating, life-changing, true. As the two stood beneath the stars, Britt realized something extraordinary. The greatest miracle wasn't learning she didn't have the illness. The greatest miracle was discovering she finally had permission to live, and she intended to make every second count. As dawn approached over Port Charles, Britt Westbourne stepped into a future filled with possibilities, a future she had once believed was impossible, a future defined not by fear, but by courage, not by loss, but by hope, and not by illness, but by life. The Brit who boarded that plane the next morning was not the same woman who had opened that envelope weeks earlier. She was stronger, wiser, and finally ready to embrace the extraordinary second chance fate had given her. In Port Charles, miracles are rare, but sometimes, when hope seems completely lost, life has a way of rewriting the story, and for Brit Westbourne, the most beautiful chapter was only beginning.